The galaxy was old. It had seen empires rise and fall like waves on an endless ocean. It had witnessed the birth of stars and the death of worlds, and in all its ancient history, it had learned one simple truth: power was everything. The Galactic Concordance was proof of this truth. 4,000 species had joined together under its banner, not out of friendship or shared dreams, but because unity meant survival. The strong protected the weak, and the weak paid tribute to the strong. It was a system that had worked for 10,000 years. When humanity first appeared on the galactic stage 3 centuries ago, no one paid much attention. They came from a small blue planet on the edge of an unremarkable spiral arm. Their ships were slow, their weapons were primitive, their population was tiny compared to the great empires of the galaxy. The Concordance Council debated for less than an hour before granting humanity membership. They were harmless, the council decided. Useful, even. Humans had a talent for trade and diplomacy that impressed some of the older species. They could serve as neutral parties in disputes. They could colonize the harsh, unwanted worlds that other species found worthless. High Arbiter Keth Voran, the supreme leader of the Concordance, had spoken the words that would echo through history. Humanity knows its place, he said. They are not warriors. They are not conquerors. They are merchants and settlers, nothing more. For 300 years, humanity proved him right. Earth's official fleet consisted of just 200 vessels. They were modest cruisers armed with standard plasma weapons, the same technology that most species used. Nothing special, nothing threatening. Human soldiers numbered in the low millions. A laughable figure compared to the Vorthax Empire's billion-strong armies or the crystalline hegemony's endless legions of warrior drones. Humans built no superweapons. They claimed no strategic territories. They made no enemies, and demanded no tribute. They simply existed, trading goods from their homeworld, settling on planets that no one else wanted, and occasionally helping to negotiate peace between warring factions. The galaxy grew comfortable with humanity. They were like a small, friendly animal that lived in the corner of a great house. Harmless, forgettable, safe. This was exactly what humanity wanted. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, in bunkers that no alien scanner had ever detected, humanity kept its secrets. The true fleet did not number in the hundreds, it numbered in the tens of thousands. Ships that had never seen the light of a foreign star. Weapons that operated on principles the galaxy had not yet discovered. Technologies that would make the greatest empires tremble. The Shadow Doctrine was humanity's greatest achievement, and its greatest lie. It had begun 3 centuries ago, when the first human explorers made contact with alien life. They had expected wonder and friendship. What they found instead was a galaxy ruled by fear and violence. The strong devoured the weak. Entire species had been wiped out for their resources, their territory, or simply because they were in the way. Humanity's leaders had gathered in secret after that first contact. They looked at the galaxy and saw their own history reflected back at them. War, conquest, genocide. The patterns were the same, only the scale was different, and they understood something that would shape human policy for the next 300 years. The galaxy was not ready to know what humanity truly was. Earth's violent history had forged something unique. Humans had spent their entire existence fighting each other. They had developed weapons of terrible power. They had refined the art of war to a science, and in the century before first contact, they had begun to unlock the deepest secrets of physics itself: quantum mechanics, relativity, the manipulation of space-time, technologies that other species had abandoned as impossible. Humanity had pursued with desperate determination. By the time they met their first aliens, Earth's secret laboratories had already achieved breakthroughs that would take other civilizations millennia to discover. But the leaders of humanity chose to hide all of this. "We are newcomers," said Director Marcus Chen, the architect of the Shadow Doctrine. "We are outnumbered and surrounded by predators. If we reveal our true strength, we will be seen as a threat. The galaxy will unite against us. Before we are ready, we must appear weak. We must appear harmless. We must become invisible." And so humanity put on a mask. The public fleet was built with intentionally limited technology. Human diplomats were trained to seem humble and non-threatening. Scientists published papers that were decades behind their actual research. Everything humanity showed the galaxy was a carefully constructed lie. Behind that lie, the real work continued. In hidden shipyards carved into asteroids, Humanity built warships of terrifying power. Their hulls were made of materials that did not exist in nature. Their engines could bend space itself. Their weapons could unmake matter at the atomic level. In secret training facilities, human soldiers became something more than soldiers. They were enhanced with genetic modifications and cybernetic implants. They trained in conditions that would kill ordinary beings. They learned to fight in every environment, against every possible enemy. In underground laboratories, scientists pushed the boundaries of known physics. They developed shields that could stop any weapon. They created sensors that could detect a single ship across an entire star system. They designed drones that could think and fight without human guidance. All of this was hidden. All of this was secret. All of this waited for the day when humanity would need it. 300 years passed. Generations lived and died without ever knowing the truth. The secret was passed down from leader to leader, from scientist to scientist, from soldier to soldier. It became almost mythical, a sacred trust that bound humanity together in ways that no outsider could understand. The galaxy continued to see humans as harmless traders and humble diplomats. They laughed at human military weakness. They pitied human technological limitations. They never once suspected that every smile, every trade deal, every act of humility was part of a plan 3 centuries in the making. Director Helena Vance was the current keeper of the Shadow Doctrine. She was 60 years old, with gray hair and a face that rarely showed emotion. She had spent her entire life preparing for a day she hoped would never come, but she knew it would come eventually. The galaxy was too violent, too hungry, too cruel. Sooner or later, someone would decide that humanity's trade routes were worth taking. Someone would look at Earth and see an easy target. Someone would threaten humanity with extinction. On that day, the mask would fall. Helena often stood at the window of her office, looking up at the stars. She thought about the weight of the secret she carried. She thought about the 87,000 warships hidden in the darkness between planets. She thought about the weapons that could crack worlds like eggs. She thought about the soldiers who waited in their hidden bases, ready to fight and die for a species that did not know they existed. And she thought about the moment when the galaxy would finally understand the truth. Humanity had not survived its violent history by being weak. It had not reached the stars by being timid. It had not spent 300 years building in secret because it feared war. Humanity had done all of this because it understood war better than any species in the galaxy. It knew that the greatest victory came not from showing strength, but from hiding it, not from making threats, but from letting enemies underestimate you, not from conquering others, but from making sure that no one would ever dare to try conquering you. The Shadow Doctrine was not a defensive strategy. It was the ultimate expression of human military philosophy, and soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn what that meant. Helena turned away from the window and walked to her desk. A message was waiting for her. A fleet of alien warships had been detected moving toward human space. Their intentions were hostile. The day had finally come. She pressed a button on her desk, activating a communication channel that had not been used in 300 years. "This is Director Vance," she said calmly. "Initiate protocol revelation. The Shadow Doctrine is now active. Across human space, in hidden bases and secret shipyards, lights began to turn on. Engines began to warm. Soldiers began to suit up. And 87,000 warships began to prepare for war. The mask was about to fall. And the galaxy would never be the same again. The Jeltari were hunters. It was written in their blood, carved into their bones, and burned into their minds. For 50,000 years, they had roamed the stars, taking what they wanted and destroying what they could not use. 600 star systems bowed before their empire. 100 species had gone extinct at their hands. They feared nothing because nothing had ever given them reason to fear. Supreme Warlord Tethkon stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Hunger, and stared at the star map before him. His massive frame towered over his officers. His scales were the color of dried blood, and his eyes glowed with the cold light of a predator. He had conquered 30 worlds in his lifetime. He had personally killed thousands of enemies. He was the most feared being in the Jeltari Dominion, and he had grown tired of waiting. For decades, the Zeltari had watched humanity's trade routes with hungry eyes. Those routes were among the most profitable in the galaxy. Human merchants moved goods between hundreds of worlds, collecting wealth that the Dominion believed should be theirs. Diplomatic requests had been made. Tribute had been demanded. Humanity had politely refused every time. Teth Khan was not a patient creature. He had tried words. Now he would use blood. 10,000 ships, he announced to his war council. We will take 10,000 ships to the human homeworld. We will give them one chance to surrender everything. Their roots, their colonies, their freedom, and if they refuse, we will burn their planet to ash and scatter their species across the void. His officers roared their approval. 10,000 ships was massive overkill for a species with only 200 vessels. But the Zeltari did not believe in fair fights. They believed in absolute victory. The war fleet assembled in Zeltari space. It was a sight that would make any species tremble. Massive dreadnoughts bristling with weapons, carrier ships holding thousands of fighter craft, troop transports carrying millions of warriors hungry for conquest. It was the largest military force the Dominion had deployed in a century. When the fleet departed for human space, Supreme Warlord Teth Khan broadcast his ultimatum across every communication channel in the galaxy. He wanted everyone to see. He wanted everyone to know what happened to species that defied the Zeltari. Humanity. His voice boomed across the stars. Your time of freedom has ended. You will surrender your territories, your colonies, and your sovereignty to the Zeltari Dominion. You will become our servants, and you will be grateful for the mercy we show in letting you live. You have one solar cycle to comply. If you resist, we will wipe your species from existence. Every man, woman, and child will die. Your planet will be reduced to rubble. Your very memory will be erased from history. He paused, letting his words sink in across 1,000 worlds. This is not a negotiation. This is your only warning. The galaxy reacted exactly as Teth Khan expected. Fear, sympathy, and, most importantly, inaction. In the halls of the Galactic Concordance, diplomats whispered to each other in worried voices. Humanity was about to be destroyed, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. The Zeltari were too powerful. Their fleet was too large. Any species that tried to help humanity would become the next target. High Arbiter Keth Voran called an emergency session of the Concordance Council. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered to discuss the crisis. But the discussion was short and hopeless. We cannot intervene, said the ambassador from the Vorthax Empire. The Zeltari have made their intentions clear. Any interference will be treated as an act of war. Humanity has no defensive treaties, added the delegate from the crystalline hegemony. They chose neutrality. They chose to stand alone. We are not obligated to die for their choice. Perhaps we can negotiate for survivors, suggested a smaller species. The Zeltari sometimes keep useful slaves. Humanity could live on in some form. Keth Voran listened to all of this with a heavy heart. He did not hate humanity. He had even grown fond of some human diplomats over the years. But fondness was not worth risking his own species for. We will observe, he declared. We will not act. The session ended. The galaxy turned its eyes to human space, waiting to watch a species die. But something strange happened next. Humanity's response came not from a terrified government begging for mercy. It came from a single woman standing calmly before a galactic broadcast. Director Helena Vance looked into the camera with eyes that held no fear. Her voice was steady and clear. The Zeltari Dominion has threatened humanity with extinction, she said. We have received Supreme Warlord Teth Khan's ultimatum. She paused, and something in her expression sent a chill through every being watching. We decline. Across the galaxy, diplomats gasped. Officers on Zeltari ships laughed at the foolishness of this tiny species. But Helena was not finished. We would like to offer the Zeltari Dominion a final opportunity to withdraw from human space, she continued. This offer is not made out of weakness. It is not made out of fear. It is made because we believe in giving every enemy one chance to walk away. Her eyes seemed to look directly at Teth Khan, though she was light years away. What comes next cannot be undone. Supreme Warlord. Your ships, your warriors, your empire. Everything you have built could end in the next few hours. I am asking you, one last time, to reconsider. She folded her hands. The choice is yours. The broadcast ended. Silence fell across the galaxy. Then the laughter began. On the bridge of the eternal hunger, Teth Khan threw his head back and roared with amusement. His officers joined him, their harsh voices echoing through the ship. The The human female had just threatened the greatest military power in the galaxy with 200 tiny ships. It was the most absurd thing any of them had ever heard. She has courage, Tethkan admitted, still chuckling. I will give her that. Stupid, pointless courage, but courage nonetheless. He turned to his tactical officer. Plot a course for the human homeworld. Maximum speed. I want to be there before their pathetic fleet can even form a defensive line. Yes, Supreme One. The Zheltari fleet surged forward, 10,000 ships of war hungry for blood. In the Concordance Council chambers, Keth Voran watched the broadcast with confusion. He had met Helena Vance several times. She was intelligent and calculating. She never made mistakes, so why would she make such a foolish statement? Perhaps she has lost her mind, suggested one of his advisors. The stress of impending doom can break even the strongest minds. Perhaps, Keth Voran murmured, but something nagged at him. Something in the way she had spoken. There was no desperation in her voice, no plea for help, no bargaining. She had sounded like someone who held all the cards in a game no one else knew they were playing. He shook his head. It was impossible. Humanity had no hidden weapons. They had no secret allies. Every intelligence report confirmed that they were exactly what they appeared to be. A weak, peaceful species about to be crushed by a superior force. And yet, Keth Voran found himself unable to look away from the tactical display showing the Zheltari fleet moving toward human space. Some ancient instinct, something buried deep in his species' memory, was telling him that something was very wrong. He did not know what it was, but he suspected he was about to find out. On Earth, Director Helena Vance watched the Zheltari fleet approaching on her own tactical display. Around her, officers moved with calm efficiency, executing orders that had been planned centuries ago. How long until they reach soul space? She asked. 6 hours, replied her tactical officer. Helena nodded. Begin positioning the fleet. Silent running, no active sensors. I want them to see nothing until the moment I give the order. Yes, Director. And the message to the civilian population? Helena considered for a moment. For 300 years, most of humanity had lived in ignorance of the shadow doctrine. They believed they were defenseless. They believed they were about to die. She could not tell them the truth yet. The secret had to hold for a few more hours. Tell them to stay calm. Tell them that their government has the situation under control. Tell them to trust us. The officer hesitated. Will they believe that? Helena allowed herself a small smile. No. But soon they will understand why they should have. She turned back to the display, watching the red dots of the Zheltari fleet moving closer and closer to human space. 10,000 ships, millions of warriors, the most powerful military force the galaxy had seen in a century. They had no idea what was waiting for them, and in 6 hours, the galaxy would learn a truth that would shake it to its foundations. Humanity was not prey. Humanity had never been prey, and the Zheltari were about to discover what happened when predators hunted wolves in sheep's clothing. The Zheltari fleet entered soul space like a wave of death. 10,000 warships spread across the void, their weapons charged and their warriors ready. Supreme Warlord Tethkan stood on his bridge, watching the small blue planet called Earth grow larger on his display. In a few hours, that planet would be a graveyard. Where is their fleet? Asked his tactical officer, scanning the surrounding space. I detect only 187 vessels holding position near the third planet. Tethkan snorted. That is their fleet. All of it. Pathetic, is it not? The officer nodded, but something troubled him. Supreme One, I am detecting unusual sensor interference in several regions of the system. The asteroid fields, the outer planets, the dark spaces between worlds. Our scans cannot penetrate these areas. Debris, cosmic dust. Nothing more. Tethkan waved his clawed hand dismissively. Humanity does not have the technology to hide anything from us. Their tricks are as primitive as their weapons. The fleet continued forward. The human ships made no move to attack. They simply held their position, waiting. Tethkan found their stillness amusing. They were probably frozen with fear, he thought. Their captains were probably praying to whatever gods humans believed in. Open a channel to the human commander, Tethkan ordered. I want to hear them beg. The communication link crackled to life. Instead of a frightened officer, the calm face of Director Helena Vance appeared on screen. She looked exactly as she had in her broadcast. No fear. No panic. just quiet certainty. "Supreme Warlord," she said, "you have entered human space. I gave you a chance to withdraw. You chose not to take it. I chose to accept your surrender." Tethkan replied, "You have 1 hour to power down your ships and prepare for boarding. Resist, and we will destroy you." Helena shook her head slowly. "I am afraid you misunderstand the situation, Supreme Warlord. You were never the predator here. You were always the prey." Before Tethkan could respond with anger, his tactical officer shouted in alarm, "Supreme One!" Massive energy signatures appearing throughout the system. Ships, hundreds of ships, thousands of ships. They are emerging from nowhere. Tethkan spun to face the tactical display, and his blood turned to ice. The stars were moving. From every direction, from places where sensors had shown nothing but empty space, warships began to appear. They emerged from asteroid fields and from behind moons. They materialized in the darkness between planets. They rose from coordinates that had registered as completely empty. The numbers on the display climbed rapidly. 1,000 ships, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000. The final count made Tethkan's legs go weak. 87,000 warships. They were human ships, but they were nothing like the pathetic cruisers the galaxy knew. These were monsters of war. Dreadnoughts larger than anything the Zeltari had ever built. Carrier ships disgorging clouds of smaller craft that moved with impossible speed. Sleek destroyers that flickered in and out of visibility, as if they existed only partially in normal space. And in the center of the formation, 7 massive structures that dwarfed everything else. They were spherical, covered in strange machinery, and they pulsed with energy that made the sensors scream. What are those?" Tethkan whispered. His tactical officer stared at the readings with wide, terrified eyes. "Planet crackers, Supreme One. 7 of them. Each one is capable of destroying an entire world." Silence fell across the bridge. The hunters had become the hunted, but the horror was not finished. "Supreme One, I am analyzing their weapons and shields. Their technology. It should not be possible." The officer's voice cracked. "Their smallest destroyer has more firepower than our flagship. Their weapons use quantum collapse technology. Their shields manipulate space-time itself. We have nothing that can hurt them." The Zeltari fleet, 10,000 ships of war, suddenly looked very small, very weak, very alone. Director Helena Vance's voice filled the bridge once more. "Now you see," she said. "Now you understand. Humanity did not hide because we were afraid. We hid because we chose to. We did not show our weapons because we did not want to use them. We hoped we would never have to." Her expression remained calm, but her eyes were cold. "You forced our hand, Supreme Warlord. You threatened our home. You promised to kill our children. And so now you face the truth that we have hidden for 300 years. The human fleet began to move. It did not charge forward or position for attack. It simply surrounded the Zeltari forces with quiet, terrible precision. There was no escape route. There was no weakness in the formation. There was only death, waiting patiently. "You have 2 options," Helena continued. "Leave, right now. Turn your fleet around and return to Zeltari space. Carry the message of what you have seen to every corner of the galaxy. Tell them what happens when someone threatens humanity." She paused. "Or stay, fight, die, become the message yourselves. Your choice." Tethkan stared at the display. His mind, trained for war and conquest, tried to calculate a path to victory. There was none. His fleet was outnumbered nearly 9-1. The enemy technology was centuries beyond anything the Zeltari possessed. If he ordered an attack, his entire force would be annihilated in minutes. For the first time in his life, Supreme Warlord Tethkan felt true fear. He thought about his pride. He thought about the honor of the Dominion. He thought about the shame of retreating without a fight. But none of those things mattered if he and his entire fleet were dead. "Reverse course," he ordered, his voice barely a whisper. His officers stared at him in shock. "Supreme One? I said reverse course." Tethkan roared. "All ships, maximum speed. Return to Dominion space immediately." The order spread through the Zeltari fleet. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the massive warships began to turn. Their engines flared to life. They fled, retreating from human space like frightened animals running from a predator. The human fleet did not pursue. It did not fire. It simply watched in silence as 10,000 ships of war ran away. On the bridge of the eternal hunger, Tethkon stood motionless, watching the human ships shrink on his display. He had come to Sol Space as a conqueror. He left as a defeated fool. The most powerful military force the Dominion had ever assembled had been humiliated without a single shot being fired. "Transmit our sensor logs to High Command," he ordered quietly. "Transmit them to everyone. The entire galaxy must know what we have seen." His tactical officer nodded. "Yes, Supreme One." The data began to flow across the galaxy. Recordings of the human fleet's emergence, scans of their impossibly advanced technology, analysis of weapons that could unmake matter and shields that bent space. All of it, transmitted to every corner of the galactic concordance. Within hours, 4,000 civilizations would see what the Zeltari had seen. They would analyze the same data. They would reach the same conclusions, and they would understand that everything they thought they knew about humanity was a lie. Back on Earth, Director Helena Vance watched the Zeltari fleet retreat. Around her, officers celebrated quietly. Some embraced each other. Some wept with relief. The moment they had prepared for across generations had finally come, and humanity had survived. "Director," said her aide, "the Zeltari are transmitting our fleet data to the entire galaxy." Helena nodded. "Good. Let them. It saves us the trouble." "What happens now?" Helena turned away from the display and looked out a window at the stars. For 300 years, humanity had worn a mask. They had pretended to be weak. They had let the galaxy believe they were harmless. That mask was gone forever now. "Now," she said, "we find out how the galaxy reacts to the truth. We find out if they accept us as we really are, or if they unite against us in fear." She paused, "and we prepare for whatever comes next." The stars twinkled in the darkness. Somewhere out there, billions of aliens were about to learn that the universe was not what they thought it was. The small, harmless species they had ignored for 3 centuries was not small. It was not harmless. It was the most dangerous civilization the galaxy had ever produced, and now, everyone knew it. The recordings spread across the galaxy like a plague. Every species with access to a communication network received the Zeltari sensor logs within hours. Scientists analyzed the data. Military commanders studied the formations. Political leaders watched the footage of 87,000 human warships emerging from nothing. And then came the silence. For 3 days, the galactic communication networks went almost completely quiet. Species that normally chattered endlessly about trade and politics and petty disputes had nothing to say. They were too busy trying to understand what they had just witnessed. On the Vorthax homeworld, the Supreme Military Council gathered in their war room. Holographic displays showed the human fleet from every angle. Officers pointed at individual ships, trying to identify weapons and capabilities. The numbers did not make sense. The technology did not make sense. Nothing made sense. Their smallest ship outguns our largest battleship, the Vorthax fleet commander reported. Their shields use some form of space-time manipulation that our weapons cannot penetrate. Their quantum collapse warheads can destroy matter at the atomic level. One of those warheads could obliterate an entire continent. The Supreme General stared at the display. "How did we miss this? We have spies in human space. We have intelligence agents monitoring their shipyards. We have been watching them for 300 years. They showed us what they wanted us to see," the fleet commander answered. "Every report, every observation, every piece of intelligence, it was all part of their deception. They built their real fleet in hidden facilities that we never detected. They developed their technology in secret laboratories that did not appear on any of our scans. That level of deception would require perfect discipline across their entire species. No leaks, no traitors, no accidents. For 3 centuries. The fleet commander nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. That is exactly what they achieved." The Supreme General sat down heavily in his chair. The Vorthax were one of the most powerful military species in the galaxy. They had 1 billion soldiers and thousands of warships. They had conquered dozens of worlds. And now he understood that if humanity decided to attack them, they would be annihilated within weeks. Similar scenes played out across 4,000 worlds. The crystalline hegemony ran simulations of a war against humanity. Every simulation ended the same way. Total hegemony defeat in less than 30 standard days. Their planet-cracking dreadnoughts, weapons that had terrified the galaxy for millennia, were meaningless against human technology. The merchant guilds of the Inner Rim calculated the economic implications. If humanity chose to take control of galactic trade by force, no one could stop them. The wealth of 1,000 civilizations would flow to Earth, and there would be nothing anyone could do about it. The Peaceful Collective, a pacifist alliance of 40 species, realized with horror that their survival had never depended on their principles or their treaties. It had depended entirely on humanity choosing not to conquer them. Fear spread through the galaxy like poison in water. It infected every government, every military, every civilization. The comfortable understanding of galactic power had been shattered in an instant. On the fourth day, High Arbiter Keth Voran called an emergency session of the Concordance Council. It was the largest gathering in the Council's history. Representatives from every member species crowded into the great chamber, their faces tight with worry and fear. Keth Voran stood at the central podium, his scales pale with stress. He had not slept in 3 days. He had watched the recordings hundreds of times, and he had finally understood the truth that made his blood run cold. 300 years ago, he began, his voice heavy. I stood before this council and spoke words that I will regret for the rest of my life. I said that humanity knew its place. I said they were merchants and settlers, nothing more. I said they were harmless. He paused, looking out at the silent assembly. I was wrong. We were all wrong. And we must now face the consequences of our blindness. He activated a holographic display showing the human fleet. This is what humanity has been hiding from us. 87,000 warships, technology that exceeds anything in our databases, military capabilities that could defeat any force in the galaxy. The numbers hung in the air, impossible and terrifying. We need to understand what this means, Keth Voran continued. Humanity could have conquered us at any point in the last 3 centuries. They had the power, they had the technology, they had the numbers, and yet they chose not to. A murmur ran through the assembly. This was the question that haunted everyone. If humanity could have ruled the galaxy, why didn't they? We thought we were the shepherds, Keth Voran said, and humanity was just another herd animal we had allowed to graze in our pastures. But we were never the shepherds. We were the sheep. And humanity was the wolf that chose to wear wool. The murmur grew louder. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They watched us. Keth Voran continued. For 300 years they traded with us, negotiated with us, lived among us. They learned our languages, our customs, our weaknesses. They mapped our defenses and studied our technologies. They knew exactly how to defeat any of us, if they chose to. Why? Demanded the Vorthax ambassador. Why hide such power? Why pretend to be weak? Keth Voran shook his head. I do not know. Perhaps they feared that revealing their strength would unite us against them. Perhaps they simply did not want to rule. Perhaps. He paused, considering his next words carefully. Perhaps they were waiting to see if we were worthy of their trust. Silence fell across the chamber. Consider the evidence, Keth Voran said. In 300 years, humanity has never started a war. They have never conquered a planet. They have never threatened another species. They built their fleet in secret, yes, but they never used it until they were forced to defend themselves. He looked directly at the Jeltari representative, who sat alone in a corner of the chamber, avoided by everyone. The Jeltari attacked them unprovoked. They threatened to exterminate the entire human species. And what did humanity do in response? They revealed their fleet. They gave the Jeltari a chance to retreat, and when the Jeltari ran, humanity did not pursue. They did not destroy the fleet that had come to murder them. The Jeltari representative stared at the floor, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Humanity showed restraint, Keth Voran said. They showed mercy. They could have ended the Jeltari dominion in a single day. They chose not to. What guarantee do we have that they will continue to show restraint? Asked the Crystalline Hegemony delegate. What stops them from deciding tomorrow that they want to rule us all? Keth Voran had no answer for that. None of them did. In the days that followed, the galaxy tried to adjust to its new reality. Governments that had ignored humanity suddenly sought diplomatic relations. Species that had mocked human military weakness now spoke of humanity with fearful respect. Old alliances were reconsidered. Old plans were abandoned. The Jeltari dominion collapsed within weeks. Supreme Warlord Teth Khan was executed by his own government, blamed for the humiliation. But his death changed nothing. The Dominion's military reputation was destroyed. Their subject worlds began to revolt. Their empire crumbled like a building with no foundation. And through all of this, humanity remained quiet. They did not boast about their victory. They did not make demands. They did not use their newly revealed power to reshape the galaxy. Their trade ships continued to travel the same routes. Their diplomats continued to negotiate with the same calm politeness. Their colonists continued to settle the same harsh worlds. It was as if nothing had changed, but everything had changed. Everyone knew it. The comfortable lie was gone forever. On 1,000 worlds, a new phrase began to spread. It was whispered in dark corners and spoken in nervous conversations. It became the unofficial rule that governed how the galaxy dealt with humanity. Never threaten Earth, never provoke humans, never give them a reason to stop being peaceful. Because now everyone understood the truth. The most dangerous species in the galaxy was not the one that conquered worlds. It was the one that could conquer everything and chose not to, for now. 6 months had passed since the day humanity revealed its true power. The galaxy had changed in ways both visible and invisible. Old empires trembled. New alliances formed. And everywhere, beings who had never thought twice about humanity now watched them with careful, fearful eyes. Director Helena Vance stood before the Galactic Concordance Council for the first time since the crisis. The great chamber was packed with representatives from 4,000 species. Every seat was filled. Every eye was on her. She walked to the central podium with the same calm confidence she had shown the Jeltari. Behind her, the holographic display showed Earth floating peacefully in space, surrounded by the hidden fleet that had terrified the galaxy. "I understand your fear," she began. "I understand your questions. You wonder why we hid our power. You wonder what we want. You wonder if you are safe." She paused, letting her words settle over the silent assembly. "Let me tell you the truth." Helena pressed a button, and the display changed. It showed ancient human history. Images of war and destruction. Cities in flames. Weapons that could destroy millions in an instant. "Humanity was born in violence," she said. "Our history is a story of endless conflict. We fought over land, over resources, over ideas. We killed each other in numbers that would horrify most of you. We invented weapons capable of destroying our own planet." The images shifted to show nuclear explosions, massive armies, and the aftermath of terrible wars. By the time we reached the stars, we had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of destruction. We understood war better than any species you have ever encountered. We knew how to fight. We knew how to kill. We knew how to win. Helena's expression remained calm, but her voice carried a weight of ancient sorrow. "When we first made contact with galactic civilization, we saw ourselves reflected in you. We saw the same violence, the same conquest, the same endless hunger for power, and we knew that if we revealed our true capabilities, one of two things would happen." She held up one finger. "Either you would fear us and unite against us, forcing a war that would devastate both sides." She held up a second finger. "Or you would try to steal our technology, leading to an arms race that would destabilize the entire galaxy." She lowered her hand. "We wanted neither of those outcomes, so we made a choice. We would hide our strength. We would wear the mask of a peaceful, harmless species. We would join your civilization not as conquerors, but as neighbors." The display changed again, showing 3 centuries of human integration into galactic society. Trade agreements, diplomatic missions, colony ships settling distant worlds. For 300 years, we lived among you. We learned your languages and your customs. We made friends and built relationships. We contributed to galactic civilization in every way we could except through force. Helena looked out at the assembly. "We hoped that someday we could reveal the truth peacefully. We hoped that the galaxy would evolve, that it would become less violent, less aggressive, less dangerous. We hoped that when you finally learned who we really were, you would accept us as partners rather than fear us as threats." She shook her head slowly. "The Jeltari forced our hand. We did not want to reveal ourselves this way. We did not want our introduction to be an act of military intimidation. But when they threatened to exterminate our species, we had no choice." The display showed the moment of revelation. The human fleet emerging from darkness. The Jeltari ships fleeing in terror. "We gave them every opportunity to withdraw," Helena said. "We did not want to destroy them. We showed them our power precisely so that we would not have to use it, and when they ran, we let them go. She turned to face the Zeltari representative directly. We could have followed your fleet. We could have destroyed every ship. We could have invaded your homeworld and reduced your species to ash. We had the power. We had the justification, but we chose mercy. The Zeltari representative lowered his eyes, unable to respond. Helena turned back to the assembly. This is who humanity is. We are capable of terrible destruction. We possess weapons that could end civilizations, but we do not want to use them. We never wanted to use them. Everything we have built, every ship, every weapon, every technology, was designed for one purpose: to ensure that no one would ever threaten us again. She spread her hands. We are not conquerors. We are not tyrants. We are survivors. Our history taught us that the weak are destroyed and the strong survive. So we became strong, but our history also taught us something else. Helena's voice softened. It taught us that strength without wisdom leads only to destruction. It taught us that power without restraint becomes tyranny. It taught us that true victory is not found in conquest, but in peace. She looked at the thousands of faces staring at her. We do not want your worlds. We do not want your tribute. We do not want your submission. We want only what we have always wanted: to live in peace, to trade with our neighbors, to explore the universe, and to build a future where our children can grow up without fear. Helena straightened her shoulders. Nothing has changed. We are the same species we were before the revelation. The only difference is that now you know our secret. We ask nothing more from you than we asked before. We offer nothing less than we offered before. We remain committed to the Galactic Concordance and to peaceful cooperation with all species. She paused for a long moment. But let me be clear about one thing. We will not be threatened. We will not be bullied. We will not be pushed around. If any species attacks humanity, or our allies, they will face the full power of our military. Not because we enjoy destruction, but because we will do whatever is necessary to protect our people. Her eyes swept across the assembly. We hope that day never comes. We hope that our fleet remains hidden in the darkness between stars, never needed, never used. But if it is needed, do not doubt our resolve. We have spent 300 years preparing for the worst. We pray we never have to prove what we are capable of. Helena stepped back from the podium. Thank you for listening. I am happy to answer any questions. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, delegates began to rise. They did not ask questions. They applauded. It started with the smaller species, the ones who had always feared the great empires. They stood and clapped, relief visible on their alien faces. Then the medium powers joined them. Then the larger civilizations. Even the Vorthax ambassador, after a long hesitation, rose to his feet. The applause filled the chamber like a wave. It was not the enthusiastic cheer of celebration. It was something deeper. It was the sound of 4,000 civilizations accepting a new reality. In the months and years that followed, the galaxy adapted to humanity's revealed power. Old enemies became new friends. Species that had plotted conquest quietly abandoned their plans. The Zeltari dominion, broken and humiliated, fragmented into a dozen smaller states that posed no threat to anyone. A new era of peace began, not because anyone had become less violent or less ambitious, but because everyone understood the truth. Humanity stood watch over the galaxy, not as rulers but as guardians. Their fleet remained hidden, waiting, ready, and as long as that fleet existed, no one dared to start a major war. Scholars would debate humanity's true nature for centuries. Were they protectors or potential tyrants, saviors or sleeping predators? The answer, perhaps, was that they were both. They were capable of anything, and that was precisely why they chose to be peaceful. In her office on Earth, Director Helena Vance stood at her window, looking at the stars. The crisis was over. Humanity had survived. The secret was out, and the galaxy had accepted it better than she had dared to hope. But she knew that her work was not finished. The universe was vast and full of dangers that humanity had not yet faced. Somewhere out there, threats waited that would make the Zeltari look like children playing with toys. When those threats came, humanity would be ready. She smiled and turned away from the window. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But for today, for this moment, she allowed herself to feel something she rarely felt: pride. Humanity had spent 300 years pretending to be sheep. Now the mask was gone. The wolf stood revealed, peaceful and patient, but ready to bare its teeth if needed, and the galaxy would never forget it.